So, hello everyone. Hi guys, nice to hear you, nice to see you. Okay, so that's great. I think we can start, right? So today we would like to discuss with you some of the details and our observations on the particular topic, which is software development outsourcing. And it's going to be me and Michał today discussing with you. If you guys will feel like asking any questions, just feel free to drop us a message on chat. We'll probably respond after our session today, but we'll be happy to engage in any discussions. So starting with brief introductions.
My name is Michał Walerowski. I am Business Development Manager in Ready4S. For the most of my career, I was connected with fintech sector. I was advising companies in the areas of automation, of communication, and omnichannel approach to customer journey. How to create a perfect strategy to engage and to acquire new customers. Another area of my expertise was digitalization of different processes within the companies, as far as advisory when it comes to security, which is a very important issue in finance and technology. And now I'm trying to bring my experience to other industries.
Okay. So my name is Olaf Leszniak. I'm also a business development manager here at Ready4S. We've been working hand in hand with Michał for quite some time right now. And I have a slightly different background, which makes us a very good team indeed. So I used to work at multiple consulting companies, have some background in implementing robotic process automation projects in shared service centers throughout Krakow. So an industry that is indeed related to outsourcing. It is all about outsourcing, actually. I also have some experience with cloud computing, in particular with Office 365, Microsoft technologies, and also Microsoft Azure. Additionally, I was helping throughout the years optimizing various size of SMEs and enterprise customers to optimize their IT budget and to help them, squeeze out, let's say, every penny out of what they have.
And together with Olaf, we are working in the business development team in Ready4S, and we are trying to bridge the needs of our customers with available technologies and advise our customers how to effectively deploy new projects and launch new digital products.
Yeah, exactly. So a little bit about today's agenda. So what we are going to talk about. And why. So we are going to start with a simple, or may sound as a simple topic of when to even consider the outsourcing of software development, when, and also why to even consider that. Then we will move to the most common mistakes that we in our day-to-day jobs and throughout the years we're observing in many different organizations. Additionally, we are going to talk about some of the best practices when considering software development. So we are going to hopefully help you guys understand a bit better how to approach that kind of thing and what to focus on when making certain decisions. And at the end, we are going to share with you some tips and tricks and hopefully also some interesting facts on that matter.
So let's start with the first part, outsourcing. Why and when? One of many companies, when thinking about IT outsourcing, are thinking about cost reduction. But it's not always relevant, especially when you look at rates. Of course, there are some locations which offers lower and some locations which offer higher rate. But it's very often combined with the quality of developers, with their communication skills, and so on. So lower rate, it's not always is a guarantee of lower cost. The same situation you can see when it comes to technology stack. If you'd like to outsource project with Flutter or React Native, which are quite new technologies, and there are not many specialists experienced in those technologies. You need to know that the rate for hour of such engineer will be much higher than the rate when it comes to other technologies. However, when we are talking about the cost reduction, there are other sources that are quite strong. From the one point of view, if you hire experienced developers, you can be pretty sure that they will accomplish tasks much faster than those who are juniors or do not have such big experience. So it means that the total cost of your project will be lower. Another aspect is connected with recruitment and onboarding process. If you like to hire your internal IT developers, you need to meet many candidates and choose the best one. So it means that it takes time of your internal HR department. And there are also some costs connected with onboarding and with sick leaves and holidays, which are not important for you when you choose software outsourcing.
Yeah, definitely. So on that, I would agree. That people also skip that.
Yeah.
Right? They think that the onboarding someone is just the cost of a salary, and we have all of those additionals that we need to count in order to compare those two. So another thing is in regards to the time to market, and in particular to the technology stack that we look at, and that it is to consider, right? That is a factor. So when we are looking at the internal technology stack that we currently have, we need to answer ourselves the question whether we have the necessary resources, capabilities, or qualifications internally to engage in any kind of a project, and then we may just need to augment the teams that we have, and maybe they just need an extra pair of hands, and we will be able to manage to do certain projects. But we may have a situation that we would like to either develop a new system, a new platform, new application with something that is relatively new on the market. And as Michał just mentioned about the recruitment, building the internal team and managing that internal team may be too much of a hassle and too expensive of an investment, whilst, for example, taking a look at the market and choosing a particular company that has the experience in that particular technology would be much cheaper and much more wise to just go down that road, right? And last but not least, we have the efficiency and security, right? So we may need, for example, outsourcing not only for a fact of developing the project or augmenting our internal team, but we may need to have an extra pair of hands or a fresh perspective on our existing environment, our existing systems, applications, and so on and so forth, just to make sure that our security standards and the efficiency of the existing solutions is up to date and up to the market standard, right?
I totally agree with technical aspects of time to market, but when we are talking about this topic, there's also a business perspective. So it means that it's quite often that you need to adapt to changing business circumstances. For example, if you would like to go ahead with your competitors or chase them, it's very often that a product manager will invent some very interesting product, which should be delivered also by IT team. And in such situations, it's a good idea to engage external software developers, external software providers, to develop it quickly without this time for recruiting or without the time needed to finish other internal projects. Another thing is innovations, which are often prepared for upcoming events or for stakeholders and decision makers in a company. If you would like to, for example, develop some POC or MVP of solution, it's good to do it by external resources, which make to do it faster.
Yeah, definitely. So that was about why and when to outsource. Now we would like to share with you some of the perspective of of our perspectives on the common mistakes that are often made when either even considering the software outsourcing, software development outsourcing, or while being in a process of actually executing such a venue. So the first thing is what we observe throughout the industry and while engaging in with some of the customers is the short time frames, and they may regard to the first one, which is the start of the inquiry stage, a little too close to the actual deadline, right? So we have only 1 week or 2 weeks. Believe me, we've seen such situations multiple times, to take a look at, I don't know, a dozen or half a dozen companies, right, to evaluate their particular processes and their teams, their engagement and involvement, experience, and so on and so forth, which, as you can probably imagine, is rather unrealistic. So planning according to the time would be something really desirable when you guys would like to have a good end result when it comes to the software development outsourcing. And another thing that is often overlooked is the short time to prepare a high quality proposal, right? Because in order to do so, we need to, not only us, the two of us, right, but our team, which means the backend developers, technical sales engineers, designers in some cases, and so on and so forth. We need to analyze the current situation within the client. We need to sometimes look at hundreds of pages through the RFPs or technical documentation, and then to produce the proposal out of it. It sometimes takes, of course, a few hours, but sometimes it takes us a few days of hard work. Therefore, if we don't have enough time to prepare such a proposal, the quality may be affected naturally.
Another common mistakes made quite often is low budget and low pricing. Outsourcing is not outcasting, and such projects which are done outside the company by external vendors should be as important as those done by internal IT. And if you would like to get high quality developers, you should always realize that good quality companies have a little bit longer wrap-up time. They usually do not have big teams sitting on a bench and waiting for new products. Another thing, we often say that a penny saved is penny earned, but it's definitely not in the IT industry. Very often our customers want to reduce price and, for example, don't count hours for UX, UI, QA assurance, or project manager. And believe us, it's impossible to deliver a good quality project without necessary time for manual or automated tests, or without the attention of project manager. It always also happens that the customers don't want to pay for UX designs, and they are asking why those designs aren't so superior. And it's in the situation when developer need to do it by himself. So usually we advise our customers what should be included in each project.
Exactly. So another thing which may be a little controversial when we are talking to, and if some of you guys are from the enterprise, so it's too big a role of a procurement. Don't get us wrong, we are fans of procurement. We engage procurement departments on a daily basis, so that's normal stuff for us. But what we observe in various processes is that there is too big role of a procurement, and an understanding that the procurement is becoming this dominant factor within the process. And although they have their own, responsibilities and so on and so forth, and we understand that, they do not always have that inside perspective of what needs to be done, right? Because often the product manager is outside of that department, the IT department that is currently operating is outside of that department. Therefore, they are becoming this dominant factor, while they are not always the most well orientated in a particular field. Let's call it that way. Additional thing is that we always face the multiple evaluation criteria, and we'll probably discuss it in a minute a bit more, because we are fans of evaluation criteria per se. It's good to define them, but what is definitely not welcome, or what we do not see as a relevant for such processes, is to have the evaluation criteria that do not align anyhow with a particular project, right? Just to give you guys an example, we've had a situation of requesting for a certain years of experience within the technology that is not even on the market for so many years. So it's next to impossible to find a senior developer with 7 years of experience in technology that exists for 3 years, right? So this is one of such examples. And another thing is unrealistic demands. That means that either an extremely tight deadline, right, to deliver a huge project, or other things that may be expected, like multiple dozens, if not hundreds even, of certifications that can be only fulfilled by huge enterprises, or even by the few companies that are on the market in the world.
When we are talking about project teams from client side, it's very important to prepare appropriate requirements, both business requirements and technical requirements. When it comes to business requirements, it's quite common that there's no product owner assigned to a product, or his position is just too weak. Usually the product owner is essential when it comes to prioritization of requirements, to decide which should be included in MVP, which are must be, which should be, which are nice to have, or which are just unnecessary and can be developed in next stages. It often happens that there are some non-technical requirements which are very high. Of course, the security is a very important thing, but we should adjust levels of security to the type of the system. If the system is available for external customers, if there's any self-care login feature, the security should be high. But when it's within a company for internal purposes, you should always decide what is the level of security that it's necessary. The same thing is about volume. There was a lot of examples when the customers would like system and architecture for a few million users, and they actually have 100,000 users, and it had a big impact on the costs.
Exactly. So the last factor is also worth considering, especially when building an MVP, right?
Yeah.
So if you build an MVP, it's a different kind of a technology stack or an expectation than if you would like to be prepared for millions of users. So another thing, I think this is my favorite actually. So like the technology fixation. So we identify a few of those in their own breeds or particular sectors, which is in-house technology focus, for example. So some of the companies only want to do the project with the in-house technology, which is perfectly fine and maybe understandable and maybe even reasonable thing to do, because it may cut down the costs in some of the cases, but in some of the cases it may do just the opposite, right? So let's just say that one of the examples that we've had is that the customers approached us and they would like to have an particular app developed with a backend in Java, and this particular application was nowhere near being integrated in neither short upcoming future or the further future with their existing technology stack, and they were just used to having that technology on board. They weren't even planning to maintenance this application in-house. Therefore, it didn't make sense to use that particular technology, and we recommended some of the cheaper solutions, but it was not well received, let's say. Additional thing is the tech stack before the requirements, which is also a common mistake. That means that some of the customers are approaching us with a particular technology stack that they would like to use for a particular project. And it's also often connected only with, for example, the paper that they've read on a particular technology, or just their the fact that they are being convinced that this technology is quote unquote cool or state of the market technology. And it's good to first define the requirements that we need, to first define what do we expect, what is the end result, what is the business case for a particular project, and then to choose the particular tech stack that will be aligned with those requirements. And what, last but not least, it's in I think in somehow in contradiction with the in-house technology focus is to define the new technologies. So some of the customers just do not want to experiment for some of the reasons, and this is, like I said before, in some cases perfectly understandable, but in the others, it just sometimes makes sense to develop something in, for example, React Native, and to so this particular application can work on multiple platforms because it's not very complicated to do that. While for example, the customers would like to do it native, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're sometimes surprised that the budget is huge, and there's not a particular option not to be so, because it is how it is, right? We need to develop for two platforms.
We already told you a little bit about the most common mistakes, and now we would like to share with you the best practices that we saw, that we experience when it comes to software development. The first one is to define the needs. Of course, there are some obvious things like defining the goal of the project and so on, but usually it's good to define the size of the team. Of course, we know that in the reality, you usually have the date when the system should be delivered. So if you would like to define the size of the team, you need very often support of your software vendor. And we're advising our customers, knowing their needs, knowing their business requirements. We help to adjust how it's possible to achieve those needs, and what should be the size of the team to deliver it within the schedule deadline. Another thing is technology stack, and it's also a thing that you should engage a vendor, because vendors have an overview of nearly all technologies present on the market. So always the vendor can give advice which technology stack is most appropriate to a particular project. Another important thing is experience. You should define what experience you need from the companies. For example, if it's industry experience or technology experience connected with your expectations. And you need to define dependencies between different projects, because there are a lot of integrations, and it's worth to have the total overview and delivery of features from all systems that are included in the process or in the project.
Definitely. So when it comes to another thing that is really a good practice, and believe me guys when I say that you would be surprised how many companies do not even consider to bother with that, is to define the evaluation criteria that we would like to follow. Often, on my first call or first conversation with a client, I asked, do you guys have the evaluation criteria that I would like to understand, to address your needs properly? And I hear the answer, no, not exactly. What do you mean, right? So not exactly when we are dealing with the procurement department, for example, but in some cases there are none, or they just were not thought through in a particular detail. So the one thing is that is worth considering is, of course, the rate. The rate card is something that should be in accordance with the budget. If we are dealing with a budget of X, we can look throughout the world for a company that will help us to build a particular application or a project. But if you are looking for Z, we may be only limited to only Asia, for example, or like in our case, Central Europe. That really differs from market to market. It's worth considering whether we can actually afford a particular country to even engage in conversation. Another thing is, of course, the quality, which we should define some KPIs, some measurements that will be measuring this quality. upon. And it may look very differently from project to project, but it's worth to have a conversation at least on what do we mean by quality, right? Is this communication skills from a vendor? Is this something that we would like to achieve after a certain piece of time? Are we expecting some kind of milestones and so on and so forth? Another thing is, of course, the time frames. The time frames are really important, so there should be realistic, that's for sure. But to clearly define wherever we would like to have this app really delivered in 3 months, because we have a huge brand, we have a huge industry event or conference that we need to go for, and we would like to show off with a particular project there, or it won't hurt to do it within 6 months of the time frame, and it will not put the vendor on the spot, and at the end of the day the result will be of the better quality. Another thing is, of course, the experience. It's good to define how much of an experience the vendor should have in relation to our industry, in relation with the technology stack that we would like to choose, or we are looking for, and so on and so forth. So those are the things to definitely to consider.
Another thing we'd like to mention is to define the process and the responsibilities of team members within this process. So it means that you need to define stages and timeline, and be in line with those stages and timelines. Another thing that is that you should decide who is decision maker, and which people from which department should be involved in the project. And it's a very good idea to praise people, not for the choosing vendor, but to praise all members of the team for success of the project, because then the aim is the common goal for the whole team. It happens also very often that you should decide what amount of potential vendors you should consider. And our experience is that 4 or 5 vendors, it's far enough to pick this best one, because if you'd like to have, for example, 12, or some companies assess 20 vendors, it's impossible to manage the process, and it's much too long.
Exactly. It's even hard to get to know those people, and you can mix up even the names of the companies and information and so on. So that would be all when it comes to the best practices, right? But we also have something, let's say, for dessert, which is tips and tricks and some interesting industrial facts. And we would like to start with some of the cool industrial facts that we would like to share with you guys. So the first one, this is of course about our motherland, which is Poland. And the fact is that
if you're looking at Poland, you can see that we are the biggest market when it comes to number of IT specialists in Central Europe. It's nearly 120,000 high-quality engineers working in Poland.
Yeah, so that's the one. Another one is that in a research conducted by the Association of Business Service Leaders, it's shown that the experienced staff here can be hired for an equivalent of around $40,000 a year, when, for example, in comparison, similar applies in London or US, could be up to 100,000 a year. So the difference is huge.
There are also some rankings when it comes to the quality of developers, and HackerRank is one of example. It's some kind of Olympics for best developers, and in this rating, Poland plays on the third place.
Yeah, so that's one. And what is cool is that we have around 13,000 new graduates when it comes to the IT, informative science, and so on and so forth each year. So that's also a factor that is worth considering.
There are also no communication issues because Polish developers are good English speakers, and in the ranking of English proficiency, Poland is on 11th place, so quite high.
Yeah. So, and when it comes to, some of you guys are from UE and UK, then what is worth considering is that there is a little time difference. And although we are working with customers from around the world, and we are pretty much used to travel and to do the time difference affected projects. Then if you guys are from UK, the time difference is an average 1 hour, so that's serious factor to consider, right?
We talked about statistics when it comes to Polish market, which is a very good place for outsourcing. But Krakow especially plays in Poland because it's the hub for IT outsourcing companies. Mainly because we have a lot of developers. Krakow have 60,000 developers and high quality IT experts, and 1,800 each year we have new graduates from our universities.
Yeah, exactly, and we are also the #1 city in Poland when it comes to the availability of talented, highly skilled professionals. What's more important, maybe not more important, but also important factor is that Krakow is a great place to